Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about something a little special. I want to talk about the Seagate FireCuda gaming dock. A lot of the devices I talk about here on the channel are pretty mainstream, for me anyway. A lot of them are either network attached storage devices, direct attached storage devices, the odd bit of networking, or hard drives or SSD, and after a while it just kind of gets a bit same old, same old. And then something comes along which blows it all out of the water. A little while ago when I heard about the FireCuda gaming dock, I won't lie, originally I kind of dismissed it because I thought a lot of big brands out there that produce data storage devices have a tendency to latch on to current trends. They'll come up with something that's Facebook enabled, or they'll create devices for the gamers. And very rarely do you get to see a device where you can actually see a lot of research and development has gone into it. So on my first glance, when I first thought this device was kind of fad chasing, I dismissed it. And then an hour or two later on, when I was going through some PDFs, I was genuinely astounded at just what we've got here. This isn't the first docking station I've featured here on the channel, but the FireCuda gaming dock really is a docking station for gamers. In the same way we've seen docking stations for content creators and people working in post-production to bang onto the side of a PC or Mac system with a Thunderbolt port, this is really optimized for a lot of the things that gamers want. And a number of you that have bought maybe the latest Alienware or some of those Dell XPS laptops that really want to take advantage of the power of their device, but in a portable way, always find that having to use the mouse mat and the keyboard that's included with those laptop devices are pretty piddly. On top of that, these portable devices are also generally very, very few and far between in terms of ports. To keep their devices very slim and very light and very portable and energy efficient, they end up ditching a bunch of ports overall. Classic example, the very latest MacBooks from Apple that arrived with Thunderbolt 3, the last 2 or 3 generations, all of them have got like 3 ports because they go, oh, you got a Thunderbolt port, you'll be fine. But it's really not that simple in the real world. And that's why this is important, because gamers, you love ports, you love accessories because you need them. Whether you're, the old school days of Source, or dare I say it, you're a Fortnite player, I'm sorry, don't at me, or more, your Pug and stuff like that, PUBG, the real games, where you want to use earphones, where you want to really track the motion of your opponents. You want to use real gameware mice and keyboards, and moreover, you want to make sure that you can store as many of your games from your Steam library as possible. And more portable laptop devices generally don't have a great deal of storage, generally 500 on the outset. That's why this is a big deal. And I know I've banged on for about 2.5 to 3 minutes just telling you guys about why I liked this. Let's face it, this part 1 of 3 videos is about whether you like this device. Not only whether it deserves your data, but whether it deserves your time. Because a gaming device, in fact, has to factor in more than just data. So this is the 4TB model that we're dealing with today. It's already got an NVMe FireCuda SSD pre-installed inside a 4TB one, which is pretty good, with the range starting at a 500 gig model. I believe that one arriving at about 200 quid, which is not too shabby actually for an upgrade device. But on top of that, you can go all the way up to 4TB, and I think there are larger devices going to be planned when larger commercial NVMe SSDs become available in the FireCuda family. But I think the top tier one arrives at about between £450 and £500, depending on where you buy it. Now in today's video, we're just going to do a hardware overview. All we're going to do is look at this device and its intricacies, see what it offers, and then in my next video, I'm going to be doing a software overview connecting this to a Thunderbolt 3 laptop to show you what exactly it opens the door to. And then hopefully we're going to compare it finally against some of the other docks out there in the market to talk about its versatility and its appeal to the end user. So, firstly, anyone that's watched my old videos will know I am in love with a decent bit of retail packaging. I know it's incredibly spurious, and in an age of environmental concerns and recycling and waste, it's actually kind of a guilty pleasure to say that I love flashy boxing. Because, much like I mentioned in my NAS videos, a device's retail packaging, as appealing as it can be, isn't that important in a modern age of commerce. The majority of you that buy this device, chances are you're going to buy on online platforms. So you're not even going to see this until you've already paid. And therefore, the appeal of external packaging is substantially reduced compared to the old days, and I'm talking about myself, old school PC gamer, where what I would like to do is go to my local PC World, go to any electronic shop and see these enormous boxes that were screaming at you with enormous indie design and shouty 90s aggression. Look at the Doom box, for example, that would say, "Look at me, I am the coolest thing you've ever seen." You'd open it up and it's 3 CDs and a manual. This has got a lot inside, but it's also a lovely shouty external packaging screaming at gamers. But it's worth mentioning, if you are a content creator as well, you're going to see a lot of versatility in a device like this in order to really take advantage of the docking stations, you know, extra ports that it provides. So although the theme of this video is very much aimed at the gamers, it's worth mentioning that content creators can also take advantage of this device in a number of ways. I'm also going to put straight off the bat that as much as, you know, the positivity is ringing out of my voice right now, there are a couple of things about this device I don't like, which I will mention later on in the video, but I'm not going to ruin it by talking about them now. So, if we look around, we've got lots of information about first time setup, loads of stuff aiming at gamers and stuff like that. Lots of information about compatibility and with regards to how the device works in real time. And I've got to say that there isn't any strict talk about its compatibility with Mac systems. So if you're a Mac user, you may have to double check compatibility. I know some first and second gen Thunderbolt 3 devices at launch did not arrive with support of the Mac platform. So don't be surprised if this doesn't work with Mac at the moment, but will eventually. What I'm saying is, if you're a Mac user, double check compatibility before making your purchase, because chances are things may have changed long beyond the time of the recording of this video. Again, lots of information there, good old big graphic there on the front, and also lots of stuff about connection with computers, ordinary computers, connecting with with laptops or desktop systems. Because remember, you're not limited to utilization of this device in a laptop or portable environment. It can also be a static solution as well. Let's get this out of the box. And that is the first box. We have multiple boxes now. Quite interesting. And have a look there. Nothing more in the box. Actually, do you know what? Let's keep that on there anyway. Right. So, we've got the device itself there. We'll come to that in just a moment. Let's have a look at our accessories box. And I have a fair feeling we have a big external PSU in here. First and foremost, we've got our big external PSU. This is not a surprise. Unsurprisingly, despite this being a peripheral accessory device that connects via Thunderbolt 3, which already delivers quite a lot of power, this has a lot of ports on it and a lot of things to support at once. So I'm not surprised that it requires an external power brick to keep things moving. There'll be lots of information in the NASCompare article and the span.com link in the description, which will tell you more about the specifics of the specifications of this device. On top of that, we have a whole mountain of regional plugs. Now, we have got the works. We've got UK, we've got we've got Greater Europe. We have Australian and I believe Taiwanese perhaps. We have American too, and we have a Thunderbolt 3 cable. Now, this, I know it's going to seem very, very petty, is actually quite a big deal for two reasons. One, the inclusion of a Thunderbolt cable. Why do companies bring out external devices without including a Thunderbolt cable? There are Thunderbolt enabled. They've got 1 or 2 Thunderbolt ports for daisy chaining and direct connection, taking advantage of the 40 gigabits per second connection. But loads of them don't seem to include a Thunderbolt cable, which to me is petty in the extreme. And they can hide behind the argument, you know, we don't want to create waste, we don't want to make products that people aren't going to use, and we assume everyone's got a Thunderbolt cable. They bloody don't. Loads and loads of external devices do not include a Thunderbolt cable. And given this cable, it's probably retail more than a USB cable, so you're still looking at, you know, 10, 20 quid for this cable. But it's not much in the grand scheme of things, and users do get frustrated about buying Thunderbolt devices that don't include a cable. So straight away, Seagate, well done for including the bloody cable. It's also worth highlighting, make sure you are taking advantage of a USB-C cable that has that little lightning symbol. That little lightning symbol denotes that this is a Thunderbolt device. And if it doesn't have that little lightning cable, you may just have USB-C, a USB-C standard USB cable, which still means you can get, you know, USB 3.1 or USB 3.1 Gen 1 or Gen 2 speeds at 5 or 10 gigabits per second. But this is a Thunderbolt device, and once you've got multiple devices connected to it, connected to your client, your host device via Thunderbolt, that 40 gigabit per second channel that you're communicating with the device will be enough to support all of those individual devices to their full bandwidth each. If you don't have a Thunderbolt cable, you're not going to get it. The other thing is the power cables. Now, I live here in Blighty in the UK, God save the Queen and all that lark. We can buy these cables pretty much anywhere. They're them at shops, they have them at pound stores. It's really easy to get one. But apparently there are loads of countries in the world where it's not that simple to just buy an external power cable. Don't know why, but it just is the case. So the fact that they've lumped in one for every single region, regardless of where you are in the world, is a little extra step. Like the Thunderbolt cable, it's a little thing they've included just to keep things moving, so you don't have to muck around and try to buy a regional cable. And I know at least 80 to maybe even 90% of the audience watching this bit means nothing, because you I can just buy one. But there genuinely is 10 to 15% of the population living in, or of people watching this, I should say, madness, that can't just buy these off the street. So I quite like it when brands actually include them all. Lastly, inside here we've got our FireCuda gaming dock, information and warranty, all explained inside. And again, lots of information on this in the description, gamers. So, that's the end of the box. Let's have a look at the unit. Lose that over there. And again, much, much bigger than I thought it would be. Now, that's not a negative. It was just because my image and all the images that I've seen seem to be seemingly smaller than this. It's a really nice kind of rubbery feel, the outside of it. I know you can't really tell from the video. Maybe if I bring it closer. As you can see, I've rubbed my hand all over it maddeningly. We've got some ventilation there at the top. And again, this device has got LEDs all over the shop when it's in operation. But it's worth highlighting that you can change the colour of those. There's an RGB complete change there that you can operate and get the right colours for you all the way around. But again, kind of that nice rubberized, silicone-y type feeling all the way there. Got huge area of ventilation there based on the top and all the way around the edges too. Ventilation there along with rubberized feet, because this device will be sat on your desk like this. It is not the lightest device, I'll tell you that. Probably weighs a good 1.5 kilos there, I'd say, maybe just over 1 kilo. I'm sure the description below will give you more information on that, but the device itself is still pretty large. Now, the rubberized feet along with another ventilation there panel there keep this device nice and quiet, but moreover, because you're using an SSD inside, you don't really want it to be that noisy in the first place. You're going to be in quite close proximity with it, and of course you can have earphones on and stuff like that while you're using the device live. If we look at the ports on this device, let's face it, that's what you want to know about on a gaming dock, because inside there is that 4TB, in this case anyway, a 4TB FireCuda NVMe SSD inside. So you are talking over 3,000 megabytes per second read in optimal environments, and 1800 to well in excess of 2000 megabytes per second write. Now remember, read and write operations, as good as that is in terms of media use, in terms of gaming, what that means is if your library of games you've downloaded from Steam are living on this device, and then you're accessing games from this, you aren't going to have the bottleneck of traditional SATA connections. SATA will give you 6 gigabits per second, so that is the very, very height of around 600 megabytes per second read and write in an optimal media field. This is giving you the opportunity to have take advantage of media inside with read and write in the thousands, and a Thunderbolt connection between this and your PC or Mac, if it is compatible, system, and therefore remove the bottleneck of the internal media inside your device. Indeed, very, very few, even in 2020 comparatively, laptop devices have NVMe as its primary storage device inside. Only devices that have been released at the top tier in the last year or so arrive with NVMe as their primary storage inside. And even then, you've got your OS and stuff booting off that. So the idea of taking advantage of Thunderbolt 3 with that great external speed potential on this with a fast drive means in many scenarios, as long as you've got a Thunderbolt port, you're going to have faster external storage than your internal storage. Even if that internal storage is an SSD as well, chances are that one drive inside here is going to be faster. Now, it's worth highlighting that an NVMe drive is tiny. It is absolutely minute. It's about that big and it's inside there. So everything here is what's keeping this thing cool and efficient. And I will try to do a slight dismantle on this to give you some idea about what it looks like inside. But if we look at the ports, let's go with the front of the device. And on the front, we have got two USB ports here, along with audio in and audio out sockets for a microphone, a headset, or a combination of both. And of course, a power button for booting the device up for the first time. It's worth highlighting as well that the USB ports on this support USB 3.1 Gen 2, which is the 10 gigabits per second USB port. On top of that, we look at the rear, and we can see even more USB ports there on the rear. We've got 3 ports there, and the box does detail that one of these ports is a USB 3.1 Gen 2 charging port, and that USB 3 is featured on this. So a little bit of me wonders if all of these ports are USB 3.1 Gen 2 or some of them are, but of course that will be double checked more in the software review. But as you can see, one of the ports features that additional charger power symbol there, so we know that that one at the very least is USB 3.1 Gen 2. Now on this side of the device, we have a whole load more ports. We have got the power connector there because, as mentioned, this device does require an external power brick. We have two USB-C Thunderbolt 3 ports there, with one of them being the connecting point to your host Thunderbolt 3 PC or computer even, and another one is a Thunderbolt 3 display port. Now, daisy chaining is supported by this, but you shouldn't really need it given all of these ports. And if we move further forward, we even have a 1.4 display port there as well for a visual device to connect to this. In case you want your gaming setup to be external to the PC, you've got support of an additional monitor, which can be mirrored or independent, or you can take advantage of that as a separate gaming setup using the hardware potential of your laptop PC. But over here, via the dock, you can have monitor, keyboard, mouse, earphones, mic set up right here with all the work of the game being done here by the PC, which is pretty impressive. Now, after those USB ports, as mentioned, we have a LAN port, an RJ45 LAN port. Now, this is one of the areas where I was a little disappointed by the device, because as good as it is, it's not perfect. Because having a LAN port on there is fantastic. Let's be realistic, it is damn good news. The idea of having a separate internet connection there, wired in to your PC with that one connection via Thunderbolt, is now presenting you with, as a mad seagull on the roof there, we have got the potential there to have the LAN connection, so 100 megabits standard, or 110 if you wiggle around. So your gaming will be a great, suitable connection, and all of that happening via a single Thunderbolt port. The reason I'm a little disappointed is because we are seeing the release of 10 gigabit Ethernet ports, and I thought with this device arriving in the late 2019 and 2020 that we would have seen this device arrive with a 10 gigabit Ethernet port. Support 10 GBE, meaning much faster transfers, and particularly those that are media streaming as well as recording to NAS devices and more. But that said, I can't really have a go at it too much, because at this price point, you'd never get a 10 gigabit Ethernet dock at this price point with a 4 TB NVMe drive included from the brands themselves. What you're looking at is a complete solution, and therefore, as annoyed as I am about the lack of 10 GBE, you can't really knock them for producing a product like this at this price threshold, not including 10 GBE. So that's my grievance. Can't really push that too hard if I'm realistic though. So let's see if we can make our way inside this device a bit. We've got that magnetic front panel there, where if you can see from this device it comes straight off, and it's an area of ventilation there built onto the front. Additionally, we can see that separate bay that our FireCuda drive lives in. It's not even inside the device. It is kept outside of the device. That is how small an NVMe is. Before we go any further, let's take a moment to talk about the LED lights on this, because I know it doesn't seem like much, but I know LEDs and gamers, let's face it, is a big thing for them. So the front of this device has got that slightly ventilated front panel as mentioned, and there are the little tacked on boards on either side. It's not even just a magnet. That is how a lot of the lights are pre-configured from the internals and software of this device. And indeed, the way it magnetically links onto the front there, either side, also has the pins which will communicate information to those LEDs. Now, It's worth also highlighting, I know I haven't really touched on this in the video, I do apologise, but the internal hard drive inside this device is indeed a Seagate drive inside there. There's a 4 TB hard drive, and that 4 terabyte hard drive inside this device is pretty much largely where the weight goes for the internal mechanics. As mentioned, the NVMe bay is here on the outset, but of course the NVMe isn't included by the default purchase. That 4 terabyte of storage is that internal hard drive inside there, a gaming drive. We'll hopefully get this out of the chassis to give you guys a closer look at that hard drive before we finish part 2 or 3 of this video. Kind of had a look there, there's screw holes underneath the feet to get the chassis removed and taken apart, but the assembly of that is still pretty airtight, you know. But we can gain access to the NVMe bay here based on the top. Now that NVMe bay based into the top of the device by default arrives empty, but it does give you the ability via that daughter board that's connected to the main controller board of this device, allows you to add an NVMe, and adding an NVMe here is painfully straightforward. So we can just remove either side of that, remove that there, we've got the 2 screws removed, and that front bay just comes straight off. We've got a huge heatsink panel built into the top there, as you can see, built into that FireCuda top there, and you can buy the device with a FireCuda drive pre-installed, but I don't know where that sits in the configuration and the options from Seagate. If we look at the top there, we can see another lovely heatsink panel built into there, and that is malleable. You can, it's quite putty paste there, it's quite efficient, and of course we have that PCIe based M2 NVMe connector right there for the drive that you want to pre-install. And of course, the minute you've installed an NVMe inside this device, it will then be visible to the connected Thunderbolt system that's accessing the dock. So not only will there be an external hard drive bay of 4 terabytes to store your games on, but then you've got that NVMe that we talked about where you can get that additional speed and access to your games. But the device itself for me is definitely the right kind of dock. It's compact. I'm not going to say it's small because it's a little bigger than I thought it would be, but it is a compact device. It does give you a huge amount of storage options, not only from the outset of 4 TB of gaming, which don't get me wrong, 4 terabytes is a huge amount of storage, but you are going to store just mainly game cab files on that, because if you look at more modern games, again, we've talked about it before, a lot of the modern generation of games, they are pretty large these days. We are talking hundreds of gigabytes once you've got all your firmware and your patches and your game data. Consequently, they are the files that will live on the hard drive. But what's interesting is when you install an NVMe inside that available NVMe bay, then you're going to look at some serious throughput. So based on the amount of storage you're going to use, and if you aren't going to use this for much more than general cab files, maybe go for the cheaper 500 gig or 1 TB options, and then from there you can scale your budget into that NVMe drive. But I'm going to wrap things up here. Do remember I'm going to be doing the software overview of this device as well as a comparison in the coming weeks, so do stay tuned for those. But otherwise, if you have enjoyed this video, click like. If you're interested in buying one of these devices now or after all the parts, go to the links in the description. And of course, if you have enjoyed this video and want to learn more, click subscribe. I'll see you next time.